Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Apparently people haven't had enough caffeine yet this morning. إن الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه من اتبعوهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. Inshallah, we're going to begin with our first session on Saturday here. Our presenters will be Dr. Salah Sawi and Dr. Man Al-Quda, Hafidhukumullah. And we're going to be talking about contemporary issues related to buying real estate, specifically taking advantage of government loans in order to buy a house, buying direct from real estate development companies, buying a mortgaged house directly from its owner, financing with conventional banks who have Sharia-compliant options, and refinancing. For our purposes, we will switch the order around just slightly. We'll have Dr. Man Al-Quda begin with his presentation. Inshallah ta'ala, he will have 30 minutes, and I want to highlight this before we get fully underway. As some of you remember from last year, I will be keeping this very, very precisely timed. Presenters, questions, answers will all be very strictly enforced. Questions from the floor, from any of the microphones, the two on the side, the one with the sisters, is limited to 90 seconds each, on topic. Answers from the podium will be 4 minutes maximum. It does not matter who is giving the answer, 4 minutes maximum. The presentations will be limited each to 30 minutes, precisely. Our goal is to start and end on time. And your help, inshallah ta'ala, and then the mercy of Allah, we will accomplish that. Dr. Man, if you're ready. Just in case those who aren't familiar with me, my name is Saeed Purcell. I reside in Dallas. This is the 10th year I've had a chance to attend, actually the 7th year of attending, the 10th year that since I started attending, mashallah, with AMJA. So it's my great fortune to be here again with you and to benefit from your knowledge and your experiences and your friendship and brotherhood, inshallah ta'ala. All right, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We'll begin with Sheikh Dr. Man Al-Quda. Tafadhal ya Sheikh.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم نور قلوبنا بالعلم وزين أخلاقنا بالحلم وافتح بيننا وبين قومنا بالحق وأنت خير الفاتحين ثم أما بعد. Respected brothers and sisters, as you see, the topic for today is contemporary issues related to buying real estate. As you see in the schedule, we'll be having 3 different sessions back to back. I'll be talking for 30 minutes, and then our Sheikh Dr. Salah Sawi, inshallah, will be doing the same. And then we'll be opening the floor for a question and answer. The first topic is the Federal Housing Association loan or administration loan. Actually, I was supposed to just make comments after our Sheikh Dr. Salah Sawi. However, until he comes, let me just introduce to you the topic briefly. This is actually a federal program where some of the states, or actually all of the states, do provide a certain financial support for the low-income people. So much so that sometimes even the 5% down payment for the property is paid by the state. However, the tricky point here is that they do not offer, or the states or the government, do not offer an interest-free loan. There is a nominal fee on it. It could be 1%, could be 2%, could be 3%. So the main point behind the program actually is to support people or the low-income people to get their own homes. We look at it from a pure fiqh perspective. We have some facts, and then we have to build a fatwa based on it. As they always say, الحكم على الشيء فرع عن تصوره. Passing a proper judgment on something is a derivative of understanding its reality. So fact number one, that not every single individual is eligible for this program. It is only for the low-income individuals. And when you hear the word low-income individuals, it comes to your mind the darura issue and the haja issue. Okay, the darura, necessity, and the haja, which is the desperate or the dire need. And number two, to make it like clearer, the government actually is the one who is voluntarily paying the down payment as minimum as 5% on behalf of those beneficiaries or eligible people to benefit from this program. And number three, it is an interest-bearing loan. It is an interest-bearing loan. What I want to establish here is that we should not generalize the fatwa. We should not generalize the fatwa by saying, well, those people are low-income individuals, so much so that the government is supporting them. So by default, the necessity is there. This is absolutely inaccurate judgment. This is an inaccurate judgment. It has to be taken actually on case-by-case basis. It has to be taken case-by-case basis. If you have read the research of Dr. Salah Al-Sawi, he emphasized this point actually a lot, and he took his time explaining, the concept that you have to go on case-by-case basis. The fact that someone does have a low income does not by default makes him eligible or having him in the situation of necessity. That individual might be able to survive with just renting an apartment. And if he can afford it, if he can rent an apartment, then the darura or the necessity of having a place to live in is not there. And consequently, you cannot say, well, this individual actually is excused and he or she can take that loan. So necessity has to be proven. Difficult to rent due to having a big family. Let's just go with the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario. Number one, difficult to rent due to having a big family. He cannot rent an apartment because of having a big family. And number two, rent is expensive, increases rapidly. Just imagine that someone makes only $3,000 per month with a big family, 5 or 6 individuals, and the rent is $1,200 or $1,300. And as you all know, every 6 months, every 1 year, the rent actually is increased. Okay? So if the income is a steady income, is not improving, is not increasing, and meanwhile, simultaneously, the rent actually is increasing, it means that the necessity is almost there. I mean, he can feel it, he can see it. For the time being, he can afford paying rent. But what will happen after 1 year from now? What will happen after 2 years from now? So I want to establish another fact here, that الضرورة لا يشترط فيها أن تكون واقعة بل يكفي أن تكون متوقعة. Necessity could be an existing one, it could be an anticipated one. Anticipated actually based on data, not based on desire. Remember this example, $3,000 per month versus $1,200 or $1,300 rent with a big family, and every 6 months or 1 year the rent actually is increasing. Well, it means that after maybe 1 or 2 years from now, he will not be able to, to afford even renting an apartment. So the necessity actually is expected. Most probably is expected. So the door for the darura or the necessity actually could be slightly, open, and we can sit down and just discuss, whether or not that individual actually is qualified or eligible to take that loan. Like an Islamic mortgage to buy a house, before you, as a mufti, as a sheikh, before you sympathize with the inquirer and tell him, okay, I mean, you are in a necessity position, go ahead and take that loan, ask him a question, Akhi, is there any possibility for you to get an Islamic finance? If there is an Islamic finance, then actually there is no point behind allowing him or her to buy a house. So again, it has to be taken on case-by-case basis. But again, remember that الضرورة لا يجب أن تكون واقعة بل يكفي أن تكون متوقعة. Necessity can be an existing one and can be an anticipated one. Anticipated one based on data, not based on desires. Financing with the construction companies directly. If you decide to buy your house with the construction company directly, apparently, I mean, if you do not know the system very well, it's an installment sale. The house is for $100,000 cash or spot sale versus $150 credit sale or an installment sale. Well, this is not how does it work in the US. Almost every single construction company does have its own mortgage company. Does have its own mortgage company. Well, whenever there is a mortgage company, then you are talking about two different transactions. There is a sale agreement where you sit down and sign, to buy the house that you want to own, and there is another process which is to sign a mortgage agreement. The question here that we have in mind as talabatu ilm, is there any interest-bearing loan involved here? Apparently yes, but hold on, do not make a judgment. Okay, if it is proven that the mortgage company is 100%, not 99.9, 100% owned by the construction company, then you are dealing with the same entity. You are dealing with the same entity. Even if there is a sale agreement and a loan agreement, it doesn't matter, because the loan here actually is not an actual real one. It is a nominal one. It is not meant by itself. It's just a way, to proceed with the transaction. You all know the system that those companies actually deal in the secondary market and they sell their products or their contracts to Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. So just a way, to liquidate the money and to get some cash money to proceed with more business. However, and based on my research, I wish I'm wrong. I hope, I wish, I pray that I'm wrong, but this is to the best of my knowledge, that no construction company can own 100% of the mortgage company. Why? Because there is a clear conflict of interest. How come that the entity or the body who is doing the appraisal is the one who is doing the finance? There is a clear conflict of interest. And based on that, to my knowledge, the construction company cannot own more than 70% of the affiliate mortgage company. If that is unfortunately proven, then actually financing with a construction company is not different from financing with a mortgage company, because there is a third party who is lending money with interest. Again, I wish I'm wrong. Too much details here. Buying mortgaged house directly from its owner. Now, to understand this mas'ala, someone is mortgaging a house, traditionally, paying interest. And you have an interest actually in buying that house. The house actually is not clear title yet. The owner does have certain percentage as an equity, but he is still actually involved in paying mortgage. To understand the system in the US, if you want to replace that individual, you have two different steps. Step number one is to buy the house. It's just to change the ownership from Zaid to Amr. And in reality, banks and mortgage companies, in a positive way, do not care about who is the owner of the house. What they care most about is who is the owner of the loan, who is the borrower. So if you want to replace the owner and to be the new owner of the property, that would be fine. However, make sure that you do not replace him in the loan. Do not buy the loan from the mortgage company, because actually you are replacing him in paying interest to the mortgage company. And this is exactly what you are trying to avoid. So that is buying mortgaged house directly from its owner. Okay. If you want to stay in the safe side, do not even pay on his behalf to the mortgage company. Just religiously precautious to pay him the amount and let him just take care of the monthly payment. Otherwise, you might be labeled as متعاون على الإثم والعدوان, that you pay on his behalf, the principal plus some interest. However, I do not dare saying it is haram. It is not, because العبرة في العقود للمقاصد والمعاني لا الألفاظ والمباني. What matters in transactions is the reality and the essence, and not the formality or the wording. You are not paying interest. You are buying a house. Financing with the conventional banks who have Sharia compliant options. A good example for that is UIF, University Islamic Financial, located in Ann Arbor, Michigan. and Devon Bank in Chicago. Those are, so to speak, traditional banks. However, they have an Islamic finance window or Islamic finance branch. Is it okay, basically, to deal with someone who is dealing with interest as long as the actual transaction in question is a Sharia compliant one? The answer is, of course, yes. And a very good evidence for that is that the Prophet ﷺ himself used to transact with the mushrikeen in Makkah al-Mukarramah. When he migrated to Medina, he kept transacting with the Jewish community there, providing that both communities, the mushrikeen in Mecca and al-Yahud in Medina, were dealing with interest. It was never ever, proven. It was never ever reported that the Prophet ﷺ refrained from conducting or executing a transaction because the source of income of the other party, contracting party, actually was a haram. So your job as a practicing Muslim is to make sure that the transaction itself is a Sharia compliant one. Now, we are not talking about University Islamic Financial or Devon Bank, whether they are Sharia compliant. I'm just bringing an example that if it is proven that those products and those two different entities are Sharia compliant ones, then you can go ahead and proceed. And the fact that the mother organization or the owning bank or mortgage company is a conventional one should not be an obstacle stopping you from dealing with those banks. Plus tax or refinancing actually is none more than financing. Refinancing, at the end of the day, it is a kind of financing. We do have actually more than one scenario, to put it this way. So refinance is the replacement of an existing debt obligation with another debt obligation under different terms. It follows the same Islamic ruling for financing. Okay, if you want to finance, let's say for example that you went traditional with a conventional bank, and then you wanted to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by refinancing with a Sharia compliant mortgage company. If it is proven that Islamic mortgage company is doing a Sharia compliant products and refinance, then definitely go for it. If you are refinancing again with the conventional mortgage company, then there is nothing actually to discuss here, because you went from riba number 1 to riba number 2. However, if you already started financing, not refinancing, with a Sharia compliant company, and you want to refinance, technically speaking, fiqh-wise, it's not a new transaction. It's just a rearrangement or like modification of the existing contract between you and that company. Okay. Of course, you will not get involved in refinancing with no reason. There must be a reason. Maybe you will be getting more equity because the market value of the house has been increased, appreciated. Maybe you will be getting a lower rate as a profit. Whatever the reason might be, you are not conducting a new transaction. You are just modifying and just adjusting the original agreement that you have executed with that mortgage company. So for part 1 of this presentation, I think this is briefly what I have. I wish you have enough time to read the research itself. This is actually a very brief summary of the presentation. You will be having more detailed information, and I will give the floor for Sheikh Salah Al-Sawi, inshallah, to continue or to do the presentation in Arabic. I know that you have a lot of questions here. Whenever it is time, inshallah, for a question and answer, we will be taking care of the question. Jazakumullah khairan, sallallahu alayhi wa
Jazakumullah khair, Dr. Man. So he gave us lots of time to play with, mashallah. So next we'll have our Sheikh, Dr. Salah Sawi, Hafidhukumullah.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All praise due to Allah and peace and blessings upon the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and upon his family and companions and those who follow them.
اللهم إنا نسألك بأننا نشهد أنك
O Allah, we tell you, we witness that you are Allah, there's no deity except you. You are the one, the unique, who is not born, nor begets, nor was begotten.
أن ترينا الحق
O Allah, show us the truth as truth, and show us falsehood as falsehood, and allow us to follow the truth and stay away from falsehood.
وأن تهدينا لما اختلف
Allah, guide us to the truth in different matters.
من تشاء.
You guide whom you will to the straight path.
نوازل
The
شراء
topic today is new issues relating to real estate.
هو عنوان هذه المحاضرة.
This is the topic of this section. New legal issues related to buying real estate. Our Sheikh Dr. Ryan began with the first part
من الحديث في هذا
from this section,
ثم عهد إلي
and then he led me to continue.
ابتداء تملك بيت
Firstly, owning a house in this community is the American dream.
الذي يراود الداعب خيال كل
Every person in this country, in this community, dreams about owning a home.
السياسات الأمريكية
All American parties, systems have spent millions of dollars to allow people to buy homes.
ففتحت أبواب الإقراض
And so this opened the door for loans so that people can achieve this goal without looking to the security of communities. And thus, expanding in this issue with these loans have led to
نيران الأزمة المالية
the well-known economic crisis
الاقتصادية وكانت هذه الكارثة
and this financial global crisis occurred due to the going overboard with these loans,
الكساد
and it led to recession and so on
الذي عاشه
that the world went through, especially in the 30s.
لتحقيق هذا الحلم
To fulfill this dream, there are many ways. American dream, there's many ways. We're going to talk about them, as Dr. Mann did.
منها
From them,
لا يحل ومنها
some of them are halal and some of them are haram.
وهذه المحاضرة
And this lecture is based upon to differentiate between what is halal from what is haram.
ثم نضع أيدينا على ملامح طريق الرشد في هذا
And we'll try to find the best way to fulfill this.
الحديث عن هذا
To-
بعض المقدمات
There are some introductory principles we need to mention before beginning. Number one,
قليل الربا
that small amount of riba and a large amount of riba is haram. There's no difference. Small amount of riba and large amount of riba, they're both haram.
وإن كانت دركات هذا التحديد
Even though there's more levels of haram, but they're both haram in essence and basis.
أن نذكر بقرار مجمع البحوث
We want to remind you about the Islamic Fiqh Council in Egypt, what they mentioned about almost half a century ago.
المفقدون ومندوبون عن 35 دولة
They had a conference from 35 countries involved. They mentioned that talked about the different types of loans and the interest on the different types of loans. All types of them are haram, whether small amount or large amount, or whether it's a commercial loan or personal loan. All types of interest for any loans is haram. Anyone who says that only personal loans are haram as opposed to commercial loans and so on,
في الماضي
that's not correct.
كانت هناك رحلتا الشتاء والصيف
Previously, they used to have the trips of the winter and summer. The Arabs
قراضا أو مقارضة
would be involved, would involve in between, would differentiate between investment and loans. So we have two types that the Arabs used to engage in back then: the investment and loans. You invest with someone and you get a portion of the investment back, of the profit back. And then we have loans.
وذروا ما بقي من
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the difference that investments allowed, profits allowed from halal trade and investment, whereas riba is not.
العربي بطبيعته عنده من الأنفة أو عنده من الشهامة والنخوة أن من يأتي يقول له أطعمني أنا جائع.
And the Arab used to have enough.
إذا دفعت لي ربا هذا ضد الناس.
The Arabs had enough honor and chivalry that if someone said, "Give me food," he would not say, "Give me food unless you pay me interest first."
الأمر الثاني
So the Arabs had a difference between what's riba and what's not riba. And so small amount of riba and large amount of riba are both haram. Allah mentions, all you who believe, do not eat riba very many folds and times over. Nextly, giving out a loan with interest is haram. But so is haram, and it's haram at all times. As for taking a loan with interest is haram also, but its sin is not is forgiven except during its sin is forgiven during necessities and dire necessities. So there's a difference between taking a loan and giving a loan. Giving a loan with interest, you should never. There's no situation that would allow it. It's always haram, period. But taking a loan with interest is haram also, but may be allowed in certain necessary cases. Next, the impermissibility of riba is haram, regardless of any place or time. That ruling of this does not change. So Muslims are not allowed to deal with interest taking or giving anywhere with anyone, Muslim or non-Muslim, Muslim country or non-Muslim country. And this is the majority opinion, except for the Hanafi opinion. And the evidence of the majority are stronger and more guided. And from their evidences is that the absolute sense of the text of prohibition of interest. So this includes all times and places, does not differentiate between times and places. Similarly, the qiyas, the analogy of dealing with interests of someone of a non-Muslim outside of the Islamic lands, the qiyas of that is the same as the non-Muslim who lives in the Muslim lands. Since we cannot deal with, since the same way we cannot deal with interest with a Muslim living in Muslim lands, same way we cannot deal with interest with a more Muslim and non-Muslim lands. And this consensus was mentioned. And even the Hanafis mention this consensus. And if we do not take that, then we will fall into contradiction. We will fall into contradiction. We don't allow interest in one case, and we go another route and allow interest with other people. This would be contradiction. Also, another reason why we say it's haram to deal with interest with non-Muslims and non-Muslim countries is that if we would allow it, this would be like Bani Israel, who would make haram interest between themselves, but they would allow interest with people outside of them. And this was something that was blameworthy in them, and we don't want to copy them in that. And in their text, Bani Israel, it mentions that you should not deal with interest with anyone. But it also mentions that it would allow them not to deal with interest with foreigners, but allow them to do interest with people outside of them, and this is not allowed. And following this path will open up the door of licenses that would allow more haram to occur. For example, this would allow us to deal with gambling with non-Muslims and allow selling haram things like swine meat and alcohol and so on with non-Muslims. And these type of contracts would end up leading us into haram matters. And we want to mention, he's quoting from a Hanafi text, Sarkhasi. He says, if the non-Muslim in Muslim lands does a sale contract with them in haram matters with interest, or haram matters like swine and so on, the Hanafi text allows non-Muslims and not non-Muslim land for Muslims to deal with them in these haram contracts. However, the Sheikh is mentioning that he doesn't agree with them. He doesn't agree with them, and the author himself, As-Sarkhasi, doesn't agree with Abu Hanifa on this issue. Al-Kamal ibn Humam, another Hanafi scholar, same thing. He mentions if you sell Mayta, carrion, or swine meat, or gambling with non-Muslims in non-Muslim land, and you get to take the extra money, it would be allowed according to the Abu Hanifa, but the Sheikh is saying he doesn't agree with Abu Hanifa's opinion on this issue. Another issue.
ما يؤدي إليه هذا التوجه من إضعاف كل بادرة لتوفير بدائل إسلامية.
Taking this Hanafi position would also keep us away from striving towards getting a Sharia compliant options for Muslims in this country. So these type of Islamic banks who are here that are working hard to try to find alternatives. If we said we can deal with interest in non-Muslim lands, then they can just close up their shop and go home. Why would we spend so much time and energy trying to find Islamic alternatives if we just take the regular opinion of the Hanafis that you can deal with regular interests in regular mortgaging companies and banks in this country? Taking that opinion would stifle our attempt to try to find Islamic compliant options.
يعني مبالغ أكبر لا إذا كان حلال يبقى السكة مفتوحة لماذا نضيق على
If it's halal, why are we trying to make things difficult for people? Why are we making them say only deal with certain Islamic banks? Why making things difficult for people if we can just deal directly with riba in this country and find that he can just finance his house any way he wants?
يعني قد يكون يبقى خيار لأصحاب الورع وأصحاب الدين لكن ما أقل هؤلاء.
So very few people would actually be cautious and follow the Islamic option, and most people would just go directly to the regular banks.
ولو وجدت البدائل فإنها جائزة الابتداء. بالمناسبة
Also,
المؤتمرات
conferences, the three conferences
اتحاد علماء الشريعة الذي تم هنا
uniting the European Council and the American Council,
مجمع فقهاء الشريعة هنا الثلاثة يقولون
three fiqh councils, they said that thinking about mortgage
عدم البديل
is only if there are no other Islamic alternatives.
كانت تقبل به على إغماض حتى وكان فيه شيء من
Even if it's difficult, even though if it's difficult, even if that Islamic alternative is not 100% perfect and has some problems, but it's better than the fully haram. So, if there's a 100% halal option, of course we take it, but we don't. We have a halal option that has some problems. That's much better than following a 100% haram, clearly haram option. So this position, the Hanafi position, no doubt has some harms. All the guidance, UIF, Amin Housing, all of these Islamic options that are trying to find Islamic options, if we tell people go to the regular banks, then we're going to stifle the attempts to try to find Islamic alternatives. And even though sometimes it's more difficult to work with the Islamic options, people are patient with them because that's the best option. But if we open the door to the other route of haram, then no one's going to go to them again. Because it's easier and it's more available. So those are some of the problems that may happen if we take the Hanafi position. Since Dr. Ma'an talked about all the issues here, I'm just going to give a few comments. So we're going to try to split up some of the topics, inshallah. But he mostly covered everything. So since he's very knowledgeable, and he touched upon everything on these issues, so I'm just going to comment on some of them. May Allah accept from him. So quickly, based on the time limit, benefiting from government loans that and government gifts to buy homes.
لا يخفى
It's known
تلويح المساعدات في صورة هبات غير مستردة أو تخفيض في سعر الفائدة بمناسبة التمويل الربوي ليس كافيا بذاته للترخص في
there's no doubt that limiting interest or making it lower in the government loans doesn't make it halal.
مفهوم الحاجة أو الضرورة يختلف
So,
عن مفهوم المنفعة.
so necessity and need is different than benefit.
يعيدنا إلى المربع الأول.
We have to go back.
القول. هل يجوز التعامل
Is it allowed to deal with mortgages in this country or not?
وجدت حالة
If there's a necessary case or a need that is treated like a necessity and there are no other options, then it becomes allowed, whether it's a low amount of riba or a high amount of riba,
سواء وجدت كده
whether there are gifts or no gifts.
المقصود أحبابي إن مناط الحل ليس
When is it allowed? When is it allowed to deal with interest? If it's allowed to deal with interest,
يقدم لك هبة
it's not about, then we don't look at how little or how much interest.
الذي تترخص معه في شيء من
We look
الربا
at if you're going to deal with interest, if you're in a case of necessity or a need that's treated like a necessity, then it becomes permissible, regardless of whether the interest is small amount or large amount.
معنى رفع الضرار ودي الحته اللي ارجو ان نقف عندها لاني استشهد بكلام الجويني رحمه الله وما وجدت اوسع ولا افضل
And as for Al-Juwayni,
من الجويني رحمه
he defined a need
تفصيله لهذه القاعده وبالتحديد
in a very precise manner,
كأن الله ألطقه كأنما كان يطل على الغيب من
as if, subhanAllah, Allah gave him inspiration on how to define this issue, and we can use it here to benefit from it. What does a need mean? When we say a need, what does a need mean? So when we say a need allows us to buy a house, he specifically talked about a need and about homes. Subhanallah, very relevant quote from Al-Juwayni. May Allah guide us to the straight path. Juwayni said, talked about this. So if there's a need that causes much harm and people will not be able to live their lives and continue having stable lives without acquiring this matter, then this is a need that would make permissible haram matters. It's not a necessity. Of course, necessity no doubt allows the haram, but I have a need right now. If we have a need, but if there's Islamic option, then I don't take the haram for the need. Of course, we do not disagree that a home is one of the needs that everyone needs. Whether renting or buying or any other way of possession, it is a need that everyone needs. Having a home from essentials everyone needs is a home. However, the disagreement is disagreement over that need. It cannot be filled except through ownership. There are other options that you can fulfill this need, the strong need in essential manner. And thus, if there are other ways to stay away from the haram without us having to say it's halal to get into the haram. Al-Juwayni says about this issue, he clarified that a need does not necessarily mean that a person will be comfortable. Rather, what is meant is that it will repel harm and that which the outcome we expect, the hard, difficult outcomes that we expect to occur. So he says, we do not say that a need is to make someone is when someone wants to eat, has desire to eat. Because sometimes a person may have a desire for something, but it won't lead to harm. Rather, a need we're talking about is repelling harm to keep their lives stable. People, they take what if they left off, they would have fell into much difficulty and harm. And that harm which would ruin life and weakness, that would keep a person away from being able to fulfill their livelihood means.
ولم يجعل رحمه الله معيار الانتفاع هو معيار الحاجة.
And he did not make a need just gaining benefit. Rather, it's repelling harm. If it is said that should we make benefit the equivalent of a need, he said no, this is blindness, a way of looking at it.
فإنه إذا قم الحاجة العامة
If
في حق الناس كافة
we have a need that everyone in the community is going after, then we can treat this need as a necessity.
أن يسوغ الازدياد من الحرام
And thus,
وتنعما
we would allow it not so that people can gain more benefit and pleasure and so on, but we'd allow it to repel harm.
أن يعم الحرام طبق الأرض
And so, if the haram
وأن تفسد المكاسب
has spread
يجد الناس إلى طلب
and
الحلال
there is no other way to find halal, then this would be a means. Should we? This is what we're talking about. Should we allow them to take the haram here, or should we tell them to suffer without it?
أمر بديهي
So we would say no. We would allow them to take the haram in this case to repel the harm that could befall them.
وانتكاك المرض وانتقاض البنية وما يؤدي إليه ذلك من ارتفاع الزرع والحراثة وطرائق الاكتساب وإصلاح المعايش.
And the Sheikh is mentioning the different examples that the author mentioned of the harm that could befall people of financial and physical harms.
وحفظ الشعور إلى آخر ما قال فتأمل رحمه الله.
So look at Juwayni's understanding of a need.
تعني مجرد
A need doesn't mean just having desire for something.
الحاجة
A need
تعني
doesn't mean
انتفاع
just benefiting from someone or having luxuries. A need doesn't. Haja need means repelling harm and keeping people being able to live their lives stably.
أن يؤدي فواتها إلى هذا
And a need is that if you left it off, it would lead to these type of harms that he mentioned.
فرض المسألة أن يعم الحلال طبق الأرض.
And that where the hardship will spread throughout all people, and if they have no other way, if they don't engage in it, they would fall into much difficulty. That is a summary of what Juwayni has said about the definition of a need.
احتياطا في هذا الباب
And then he continued,
فقرات أخرى تدور في
and he mentioned other paragraphs including more information on this. I just wanted to define what is a need, because many people use this text in the wrong way. I wanted to clarify what he meant. Another issue, a need is treated like a necessity, yes, with conditions. However, luxuries are not treated like necessities. We have needs and we have luxuries, tahsinat.
مفهوم الحاجة
The need is what we mentioned. A need leads to much difficulty without it. However, we are not talking about just having luxuries in life. That's not a need. Luxuries are not treated
ترفها وتنعما وتوسعا لا يمكن أن يستدل به
luxuries are not treated to use as excuse to allow to deal with riba in the West
أو في غيره.
or in other countries.
إن إطلاق القول بتنزيل الحاجات
So just saying that needs are treated like necessity, period, without any conditions, would open doors for many types of scenarios that would allow
لم يجد
other haram matters.
بخلل من أطلقه وقد تنتهي بنا إلى استباحة.
And it could lead us to engaging in all the things that Allah prohibited in issues of finance.
إن لي حاجة إلى الزواج وليس
So someone will say, I'm in need to get married. I don't have any financing.
أسرتي من الشرط لشهور
And I'm bringing my family to come attend the wedding, and I want to renew my car.
أو قريب من الزواج ويريد قرض البنك
and I want a bank loan,
على أقساط.
so I'll pay it back with interest.
طبعا إذا بلغ
Of course,
مبلغ
if
عن
wedding has if getting married has reached a level where you're going to fall into zina, then this is necessity. That's another issue.
بلغ به مبلغ خشية العنت إذا كان ذلك في غير يمكن
Then we can treat it as necessity,
الترخص
where we can take the exception of dealing with riba. Other than that, all these other issues are not examples of what we're talking about, a strong need that's treated like necessity that would allow you to deal with riba. It's not just about desires and luxuries and things like that. So us saying that, someone will say, oh, I need a new car so I can come pray in the masjid every day. No, getting a new car is not what we're talking about from a need that is treated like a necessity. A need is treated like a necessity with conditions. If we don't put those conditions, it's going to open the door to engaging in many haram in financial matters, engaging in riba left and right. So in summary, if there are Islamic options, guidance, UIF, any other option, then I say clearly that all the fiqh councils in the West and others will say that's not allowed to deal with usurious-based loans and mortgaging. And it's in the research. These quotes are in my research in the book. All the councils agreed. Then it would not be allowed if there are other Islamic alternatives. Rather, they said all Islamic communities should begin, before even thinking about usurious-based mortgages, they should try, they should try to first even try to convince regular conventional banks that they should try to give us a special contract for the Muslim community. So meaning the point is you should try to achieve all means first to get an Islamic option before we think about getting into a usury-based loan. So then it would be allowed due to a necessity or a need that is treated like a necessity when the conditions are met, if there are no other alternatives. Time is over, but we can cover more through the Q&A. We'll mention the things that we didn't mention in the Q&A. And thank you to Dr. Ryan and to everyone who attended for their patience and their good listening. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
So, alhamdulillah, we finished actually a little bit early, mashallah. So that opens the floor to questions and answers. Just as a reminder, questions must be from either of the microphones. We have one on this side, one on that side, and one with the sisters. The questions are limited to 90 seconds maximum. That will be strictly timed. The questions are meant to be according to the topics that were addressed. There is an open question and answer session later on in the day for all of the additional matters that you would like to raise. We'll start from the right to the left, once again to the right, to the left, and then we'll go to the sisters, inshallah ta'ala. Anyone with questions, please queue up at one of the microphones and we'll begin. Just as a reminder to our shield, the answers are limited to 4 minutes maximum. We know we need to remind them because we all talk too much. Are we ready? microphone. Dr. Sani, you're saying there's a problem with the mic. Okay, we're ready here? Go ahead.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام.
الكرام أكرمكم الله جزاكم الله خير. السؤال باختصار
The question is,
أن الرجل العامي
a
يعرف
regular
كلمة
person
interest
knows that interest, the word interest,
ولكن هي الربا بعين.
is riba. The word interest means riba. When we say there's Islamic alternative, he thinks that this is what we call a Islamic loan. So if he goes to an Islamic alternative, he sees the word interest in the contract. So what is the right way that we explain to the common person the difference between interest and a good loan?
إذا كانت كلمة interest موجودة في الإسلام. جزاكم الله خير.
ابتداء أحبابي
Firstly,
لا يوجد في
there is no such thing in Sharia what is called a profiting loan, investing loan. It's a capitalist issue. It's a liberal issue. Nothing to do with the Sharia.
القرض لا يكون
Loans do not profit. Loans are only to help people out. This doesn't mean we don't allow investment. Investment is allowed,
يقدرون عليه
and people are rewarded for investment. And a good tradesman is with the prophets and the siddiqeen and the shuhada and so on.
فالقرض
But a loan is only to help people. There's no such thing as a we have to delete this word, profiting loan, investment loan.
القرض لا يكون إلا
Loan is only hasan, only to help people out.
مع ربك عز وجل فيضاعف
The only profit you make from loans is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and reward.
في حدود الدنيا
As for the dunya,
معاملات البشرية
dealing with human transactions, loans are only to help people out. Whoever wants to profit and invest, there are other routes, financial Islamic alternatives that you can do that with, but not through loans. We have cost plus sale. We have diminishing partnership. We have advanced payment sale. We have many different types of financial options where you can profit from, but not through loans.
الخلط هذا ينبغي أن ننبه عليه وإذا كان نفرق
So we have to clear this up for people. So we have to differentiate between
أساسها بين البائع والمشتري
financial transactions that are based on profit and based on loans. We have to This is how we explain. We have to differentiate between that,
هذه الورقة مقصود بها
between these two matters.
الحصول على مزايا ضريبية لكن ليست هي
As for using different terms for official papers for tax purposes, that's one thing, but the reality of the contract is what we're looking at. It's not about the terms, but it's about the reality of the contract, that loans are not to make profit.
ودفعا للإيهام والاضطراب ولا بأس بوجود هذا في ورقة تقدم إلى جهة الضرائب حتى تستفيد ضريبيا
If there are certain tax papers that we have to use certain terms for, that's fine. But these terms are not important as what's behind it. Riba is not allowed. Benefiting from loans is riba. Profiting through other means, financial transactions are allowed.
احنا بقايا التعبيرات بقايا ثقافة ربوية كامنة في أعماق بعضنا لكن بتظهر على شكل مصطلح على شكل كلمة عابرة تجري على اللسان مقصودة أو غير مقصودة.
Sheikh is repeating the same, is that terms it's not about the terms being used in our vernacular, it's about the meanings behind the terms and clarify what meanings are allowed or which meanings are not allowed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I have a question regarding the financial institutions that are providing these Islamic loans in this country. I think some of them you mentioned, UIF and Guidance and Divan Bank. But I think if we look into them, we still find some deficiencies in the products that they offer. They're not perfect. But the bigger concern, the larger concern that I'd like to bring to your attention is that it seems that the institutions that are out there right now catering to Muslims who are trying to avoid interest they charge very high excessive fees, I would say, if we compare them to a conventional interest-based product in this country. For example, Chase, it's such a simple process. The loan is very simple and very reasonably priced, you would say. But when you deal with any of these Islamic organizations or institutions, the costs are excessively high when it comes to buying a house or even investing in commercial property. In some cases, it comes out to tens of thousands of dollars. Nevertheless, I think Muslims will prefer this option, but is there some the question is there some responsibility on these Islamic institutions to try to be more competitive and not try to take advantage of the Muslims who are trying to avoid the interest?
I think my respected brother actually raised two different points here. The first one is the status of the 5 major Islamic mortgage companies in the U.S. And we as the Fiqh Council actually we did our own homework, our own due diligence. Back in 2014, we designated the full Imam conference for this particular topic. And even after that, we kept further communicating with the people in charge, whether the top executives or the Sharia advisory boards, if they have Sharia advisory boards. And we came up with a conclusion, actually. The conclusion is well furnished on our website. You can just Google it, just type AMJA, Islamic Mortgage Companies, and you will see like a very detailed declaration regarding the status of those 5 different companies. It's worth mentioning here actually that we are still in touch and in active communication with some Sharia advisors of some of those companies to modify or to adjust, the fatwa that AMJA declared back in 2014, in particular with La Riba and with the University Islamic Financial. So far, our position is still standing, as is. If there is any modification or change in the fatwa, which is something actually very possible and very expected, it will be posted accordingly, inshallah, on our website. This is point number 1. Point number 2, why the Islamic mortgage is more expensive. I would assume that we are talking about genuine and sound and authentic Islamic finance. If that is the case, the Islamic mortgage companies take more risk. And it's a very common practice. The more risk you take, the more profit actually you claim. If you go to the stock market and you choose to go with hedge fund actually is more risky and thus more profitable. So if the Islamic mortgage company actually is conducting a Sharia compliant, real Sharia compliant, business or mode of finance, then by default, they take actually a big amount of risk comparison to the riskless transactions done or conducted by the traditional mortgage company. Thus, they deserve actually to ask for more profit because of the risk that they are taking.
I'm just going to add a comment to Jazakumullah khairan for your answer, but I may respectfully disagree with part of that because I think the way that the loans are structured, they do remove a lot of the risk in some cases. They sell the loans. It appears that that the charges are high just to take advantage of the people who are trying to avoid the interest. And unfortunately, many people have walked away from, I won't take any names, from some of these organizations. But that's my personal comment. Thank you.
السلام عليكم. بسم الله والسلام على رسول الله. سؤالي للشيخ الدكتور صالح.
The questions for Dr. Sawi.
إنه أفضل ركب درب الشبهات.
When you say it's better to stay away from doubtful matters,
هذا الموضوع هذا متفهم عندما يكون الضرورات.
that's that doubtful matters and haram matters become allowed in necessities. Hahowever, when it comes to when we talk about and engaging in doubtful matters is something that's doubtfully haram is better than engaging in something fully haram. When companies hear about this, they'll continue, they won't change. So the Sheikh was saying like dealing with Islamic alternatives is better than the fully haram conventional banks. Because while the Islamic alternatives are slightly doubtful, the others are fully haram. So the sheikh said, the brother said, if you continue to say these things, the companies will never try to improve.
من يشككون في تجربة التمويل الإسلامي في
So
الدول.
Sheikh Salah is saying,
يقول ما عملوا
people,
شيء.
you have tried to attack the Islamic finance
ولا
options.
يزال العقد هو العقد.
Yes, there are companies that change names and terms, but the contracts are the same, the fees are the same. That's true. People complain a lot from that.
ونحن نحاول
However, we try
أن نرعى
to take into consideration that we want to support any Islamic attempt in this country. Yes, they have problems, but we need to support these options and so they can grow and improve, so that they can compete with this financial environment that's merciless. The rules, the laws in this country, sometimes force the Islamic finance companies to deal in some haram issues. It's outside their control. There's no way around it. But it's better to have partly haram instead of fully haram options. We need to work with them and continue to support them and mention their mistakes and recommend, and we do the best we can. But this is the best option we have. But we continue to advise them, we continue to tell them to stop doing certain things that they can change. But this does not mean that we should completely attack Islamic financing options in this country or in other countries. So we will point out their mistakes, and we'll point out when they have no business out of their control. They can, when they change names, the bottle is the same, the can is the same. You could put salt, you could put sugar, it's the same content. Yes, we will talk about this, and we will explain this, and we will tell them this is wrong, and we will expose these type of things. And I gave them an example of these type of companies who do this. And I'll mention again this example. Those who said that cost plus sales, they'll say it's the same as loans. Well, we'll say no, loans are different. We have someone from Qatar wanted a loan to get feed for his animal. He got half of the loan from a conventional bank and half loan from an Islamic bank. He took the loan and bought the feed from another country. And when he was coming in the boat, it sunk. The feed is destroyed. So when he went to the Islamic finance company, he said, "Don't worry about it. Since you did not possess the product yet, so we cover the loss." That's the Islamic option. Then he went to the conventional bank and said, "Oh, the product drowned in the sea." He said, "I don't care. I gave you a loan. The loss is on you. So don't tell me that Islamic finance option is the same as a loan. No, Islamic finance option, there are many laws surrounding it that are different, like this issue of liability with possession." So the cost plus sale, where you buy something and then sell it to me for more, say you buy it for 100 and then sell it to me for 150, as opposed to just getting a loan for 150. Oh, it looks the same? No, there are rules surrounding it which prove that they're not the same. Thank you for this benefit. My question, as we know, is proven that we want people to encourage people to deal with Islamic banks. And if it is proven that these companies and these banks, they themselves deal with interest, and it's been proven, so how can we deal with them? What is our stance against this?
أحيي فيك أخي الكريم كلامك بلسان عربي مبين.
I thank the brother for speaking Arabic. So out of respect to you, I will speak to you in the language of the Quran. That this doubt was propagated even during the time of the Quran. The Quran itself said, people said that sale is like usury. No, Allah made sale halal and riba is haram. And the scholars, they say that what is meant is meanings, not terms. We don't care about terms and contracts, we care about meanings and contracts. Meaning, when you deal with the product of dealing with a conventional bank and deal with an Islamic bank, they are different. The conventional bank gives you a usury based loan, and they do not have any liabilities. The Islamic bank does not give you bank with loans with riba. Rather, he trades with others. Whether he trades with them with a cost plus sale, diminishing partnership, advanced payment sales, any type of Islamic finance option, and he takes liabilities in his trade. So there's a difference between the two. So conventional bank gives interest-based loans, as opposed to Islamic banks have financing options. So you need to research the reality of how these two banks work. If an Islamic bank truly does correctly apply Islamic financing, that's not haram. Of course, there are some Islamic banks, they say they're doing Islamic financing, and then they actually are falling into interest and trying to hide it behind Islamic financial options. Then of course that's not allowed and that's haram, but you have to research these banks and see how they actually work. So the problem isn't with the Islamic finance option, it's how some Islamic organizations apply it.
How are you? How's everything? Good to see you. MashaAllah. How's everything?
Nothing, man.
How's your family?
Everything's great. Are they here? Your family?
No.
Yes, can I get
They're more over here. Ask the brother to set you up right there.
I did not hear the question.
على كل حال يا أمة الله.
Sheikh is saying, "Oh, female slave of Allah, our fatwa was it's allowed to deal with some Islamic banks or in this country. Some yes, some no. As for the companies that themselves deal with other finance issues, other financial institutes, we have not studied that. But we, in general, we heard them say, we do not sell our contracts. We don't sell loans, we sell contracts. So they say that they just take our place in the contract, not in the loan. That's what they say, as how they deal with Freddie Mac and these other finance institutions. So if that's true, if they only sell contracts, they don't sell loans, then that is allowed. As for its details, we don't know it. We did not study that. Our main concern was how the actual companies work, the client with the company, not the connection or the relationship between the bank, Islamic bank, and other finance issues like Freddie Mac. That was not what we researched. However, what they originally told us, they said that they sell contracts, not loans. Because if they sell a loan, it's not allowed to sell a loan with less than it, for less than that. If you sell a contract, you can sell a contract however you want, because the contract is like a commodity. You can sell your portion of a house for more or less to another institution. That's fine, and maybe we can study this relationship between the financial institutions like Freddie Mac and these banks later on.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. عبد الغفور من فلوريدا. الحمد لله رب العالمين أصابنا قبل عدة أشهر إعصار.
In Florida, there was a hurricane that attacked us, or a storm that attacked us in Florida, that destroyed the masjid and so on. Thank you for everyone who helped us. The question is, it appeared that we have government loans at only 1 or 2% interest. And the need now has become that we want to get our houses back or build our own house, or in general, communities would need to rebuild due to this hurricane or the storm. Some of them, or some people, their warehouses were destroyed and had products, and it's still destroyed after several months. And the brother had just finished up paying it off. A couple months later, it was destroyed. So now, can we take these loans with small amount of interest? I know it's riba still, but is this considered a need that's like a necessity that would allow him to take these loans? And most people, it's almost like a gift, not a loan, because it's 1% loan, or even less than 1%. It's almost like a gift, not a loan. Like for small business organizations and so on, administration, they offer these things. So what would allow, where is the necessity and need here? Is it a need only for a house, or also for warehouses and commercial property? Can they take these loans after this storm?
بسم الله. يمكن لعل هذا
It might be that this issue will come up in later lectures today or tomorrow. The light changed already. There are some areas where there are a lot of hurricanes and earthquakes and natural disasters. I believe these are the places where people can take these licenses, these opinions of necessity. If this is an area where people get attacked by these natural disasters, then people should get insurance. They should get insurance for their properties and homes and businesses, because insurance, as we will study, while the default is that it's not allowed, that a need would make it permissible. It's impermissible. Insurance had become impermissible because due to the uncertainty in it. But uncertainty, gharar, or undue risk-taking becomes allowed when there's a need for it. So this is like this type of place would be an area where the need would be allowed, so you could insure these type of properties. So inshallah, we'll talk about that later. As for these loans, needs and necessities, just like it can be for a home, it could also be for a project, and your entire life it was invested in this, and your life cannot live without investment in making money in business and projects. It's not just for a home. Just like if you don't have a home, that it will lead to a strong difficulty and death. Without having a way of livelihood from your business and project, could also lead to much difficulty and death. And so a need also applies to commercial and finance and projects issues, not just homes. It's not just a home. A need is not just for a home. No, it's for food, drink, clothing, and those matters where you cannot be without, like your source of provision. Like you can only trade in certain matters. You don't know how to get any other type of work. Of course, this would be a need for you. Also, protecting your basis of your wealth is for a need. You entered into a project, even a mosque or a school, and enter into a project. They buy a land, and he calculated that he'd be making. That he would be, that he finished his project, and then all of a sudden, in the middle of the project, the financing stopped. If that would lead him to lose the basis of his wealth, then this would be from the times of concession where the haram matters could be done to protect the basis of your wealth. And so business that you cannot stay without, and there are no other options for, then these are from the reasons that you can take the rulings of needs and necessities.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، أحسن الله إليكم مشايخنا الكرام. سؤالي في الأصل موجه للدكتور نعيم لأنه كان برزنتيشن منه، لكن يعني لكم فضيلة المشايخ بالعربية إن شاء الله بعد. بالنسبة للتمويل
As for financing,
الإنشاء شركات الهندسية
engineering companies, that
القانون
the law from Canada, it's not allowed for construction companies to, construction companies. It's not allowed for construction companies to own the mortgage companies. And so, the construction companies, they have a partner, 30%, and third-party financing they get for 30%, and 2/3 of the mortgaging company is for the to the construction companies. They own 2/3 of the mortgaging company, and 1/3 they don't own. That's in Canada and here. Also in Canada, another way is that we have many different construction companies go together, work together. 4 companies, for example, they come in together. They put in 25%, and all the houses that they build, they finance it through these contracting companies that work amongst them. So we'd be allowed to buy a house from them.
So the question again is about dealing with or financing with the construction companies directly. And the brother actually came from Canada. He just confirmed the same concept that I shared, that construction companies in Canada are not allowed to exclusively own the affiliate mortgage company. So there is a separation in the ownership, maybe 70-30, maybe plus, maybe more, but there is no exclusive ownership of the mortgage company by the construction company. If that is proven, then we are back to square one. We are talking about conventional mortgage, whether the construction company is owning 99% or only 1%. At the end of the day, you are dealing with someone who is lending you with interest. He said, the respected brother Sheikh, said that in Canada there is a different model where more than one construction company partner together. Let's say, for example, according to him, 25% from each company. Maybe when they put their financial resources together, they do have enough patience and perseverance actually to wait, for the client for maybe 10, 15, 20 years to pay off that loan or to pay off the price of the house. To the best of my knowledge, well, I did not even hear about this model in the United States. However, if it is proven that there is no third party to finance, and those 4 construction companies, 25% for each, are putting their resources together, construct the house, custom design a house for you based on your inquiry, based on your request, and you pay them directly with no financier in between to finance for this transaction. Actually, this is the default sale that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permitted. It is actually manufacturing, if you want to be more specific. It is aqd istithna, manufacturing contract, where you contract someone to construct a house for you. He has to bring the raw materials, he has to do the labor and the construction business. That's his responsibility. And you take the key ready to go and just pay him the price or whatever you have agreed upon. If that is proven to be the case in the US, then definitely that's permissible. But again, to my knowledge, I've not, I didn't hear about this model existing in the US or law.
So he said, I want to clarify that when you're working with those companies, the 4 companies work together in the mortgaging, but only one, you buy the house from only one company. The financing comes from 4. through a conventional mortgage, but not through a bank. Instead, if they made a bank of their own. So one of the companies builds, and the other three give loans, and the loan is with interest. Then the sheikh said, no, it's interest. That's it. It's over. It's over. No. It's haram.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is the last question, so I want to give the sisters a chance if they have a question first before we continue. Please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Majida Al-Azif from Houston, Texas. This question has two parts. Part one, again, I know we are talking about like finance institutions that has to do with the Shira al-Biyut or mortgages, but this question, like, it's just an example about cars, for example, autos or cars. If somebody, for example, decided to buy a car and he couldn't afford to pay it full in cash, and then let's say he gets involved in interest with like a low interest because he has to have the car. Everybody knows in this country you need a car, and then after some time, and he knew that he got involved in riba. And then after some time, let's say he decided either to exchange the car or return the car. Sometimes these companies, finance companies that has to do with autos, they offer the customer a deal saying, for example, hey, we are gonna knock down the interest if you just try to pay for us whatever is due. But they knock down the interest. Knowing that this person, he got involved into this situation, and then he ended up like being waived from interest. Does this put him in a position that he did not commit like something that does not please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Part two, what are the challenges?
Yeah, you can only deal with part one, unfortunately.
I'm not sure if the sister is asking about lease to purchase contract or lease contract or just buying a vehicle, buying a car. If she's asking about, if you are asking sister about buying a car, then it could be zero, of course, like zero miles. It could be zero APR, it could be with a certain APR. If it is zero APR because of the prevailing and public need for it, you can go for it. It doesn't mean that this option is 100% permissible, because this is actually a contingent or stipulated interest. If you pay within the allocated time, 5, 6, 7 years, whatever, then there is no interest, same as cash. But if you default, then you subject yourself to pay interest. That's called حرام لغيره تحريم وسائل تبيحه الحاجة العامة. Prohibited for other reasons that could be permitted based on public and general need. If it is a certain APR, it means that you are financing through a third party. Now, a very common mistake here is that, for example, if you buy 2019 Toyota from Toyota car dealership, some brothers and sisters said that if you finance with certain 1, 2, 3, whatever, certain APR with Toyota Finance, then you are actually buying a car from the owner, and this is actually a huge mistake. Believe it or not, Toyota Finance is financially, is administratively, is legally completely independent, has nothing to do with Toyota car dealership. So if there is a certain APR, then you are financing through a third party, and unfortunately you are paying interest. If my sister is asking about lease agreement, I have some good news for you. Lease as an agreement is not subject to riba to start with. إنما يقع الربا في مسألتين أو في عقدين، في عقد البيع وفي عقد القرض. So the only usurious contracts or subject to interest are only the loan agreement and the sale agreement. And if you are talking about lease agreement, then basically it's not subject to riba. I know for a fact that there is a leasing company who is buying the car from the car dealership, and in reality you are buying a car even if you are leasing it. But again, you should focus on the actual agreement that you sign with the car dealership. You are not buying, you are leasing. Whatever is done behind the scene actually is the responsibility and the default of those who are committing that, that transaction or that sin. But for me, as a practicing religious, customer, I am not buying a car, I am leasing a car. And lease actually, عقد الإيجار ليس عقدا ربويا. So lease to purchase or even lease, providing that you have three options, either to return the car or to replace the car or to buy the car, is not subject to riba. So whatever they give you on top of the lease agreement, for example, like free maintenance or tire, rotation, whatever the service might be, actually. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's too bossy, by the way.
Okay, that was the final question. We have a break now from 9:30 to 9:45.